Welcome to ViviTalks. I'm Vivienne Aerts. Join me in celebrating 100 talented female musicians from my last album, Typuhthâng, empowering female cacao farmers in Congo's Virunga State Park and restoring the rainforest. Delve into the musical journeys, creative processes, and unique perspectives of these talented women that were involved in the making of this album. Originally from Houston, Texas, Ajda The Turkish Queen is a singer-songwriter and multi-instrumentalist living in Boston, Massachusetts since 1996. With over 20 years of live performance experience in settings from clubs to churches and appearing on over 24 recordings, she's a versatile and seasoned veteran of music who believes the journey of growth never stops. She's also an independent voice teacher whose passion is working with adults on contemporary styles like rock, pop, jazz, blues, country, and R&B. Listen to a conversation between me and Ajda, aka Ajda The Turkish Queen, as we explore her many projects, her love for exploring new instruments, and her drive to always look for something new to learn.
Hi, can you hear me?
Hey, yes, hello.
Okay, great. I can hear you too. I'm just grabbing my iced coffee over here and then I'll sit down.
Awesome.
There, priorities, you know what I mean, on a hot day like this. It's so
Yes.
nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you too, finally.
So I just want to make sure I'm saying your name correctly. Is it Vivienne or Vivienne, or how do you prefer to have it said?
Well, my parents they went camping in France and then, Vivienne.
Vivienne. Okay, cool.
But obviously in America, everybody's just like Vivienne.
Yeah, well, I like Vivienne because I'm a fan of Vivienne Westwood, for example, her
There
clothing.
you go.
Yeah, so anyway, I went to the store one time. I was in London. This is so long ago now, in 2004. And I was like, oh my God, there's a Vivienne Westwood store. I have to go. But the things were very expensive. I think I got some socks and like a little leather cigarette case, even though I don't smoke. But yes, it's a beautiful name. I love that name.
Well, thank you.
So where are you today?
I'm in Brooklyn, near Prospect Park. Yeah. And
Cool.
you're in Boston, right?
Yes, I am. I'm in Somerville technically, but it's Boston. So for people listening that don't really know the neighborhoods and towns around Boston, I'm in Somerville. I've been living in Somerville for about 10 years. I was in Cambridge for about 10 years before that. They're right next to each other. So often I just say Camberville. Also, I'm really on the edge too. I'm like in East Cambridge, so right in the tip of Somerville next to that. But so going back to Brooklyn, so I record actually in Gowanus. My producer, Martin BC, yeah, he's in the Old American Can Factory building at 3rd and 3rd. So I'm trying to remember if I've been to Prospect Park. I don't think I really have. I've checked out lots of places in Brooklyn over the years, but often I'm down there just for recording. And it's like tunnel vision, just go in the studio and then come right back. Yeah. But sometimes I'll have time to go check out some things. Like one time before a session, I went to the Brooklyn Botanical Gardens. That was awesome. And then and then this last time, so I was in New York a lot between December and February this year and the end of last year, because I was mixing my new record, Faces of a Queen, and mixed it all with Martin there in New York. And so I'm trying to think of, what is that big cemetery that's there? I went to last time. Yes, I went to Greenwood. That was so cool. Martin told me, he was like, Jean-Michel Basquiat's gravestone is there, and all these other famous people, famous composers. So I went to check that out a couple times, and that was awesome.
Amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I really like that. Yeah.
So I do like getting out to check out some of those green spaces, but most of the time when I'm in New York, it is just for recording. So there's limited time to check out the other fun stuff. But I do want to get back. I actually want to check out Dumbo. I think it's cool.
Dumbo is cool. So yeah, I mean, all of New York has its charm, and
Yes.
yeah, I really like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How long have you been there?
2015. Yeah.
Okay.
Before that, I was in Boston.
Mm-hmm.
I lived in Brighton and in Watertown and in Brookline
Mm-hmm.
to study at Berkeley. So that was in 2012 till 2015.
Yeah, so I originally moved to Boston in 1996 to attend Berkeley, and I got my degree in music business management from Berklee College of Music in 1999. You might be thinking, oh, that's only 3 years, and college is usually 4 years. Well, the first year I went to the University of Houston, and because that's where I'm from, and my father was not going to pay for 4 years of private music college, so he very wisely said, why don't we just have you get your general education credits out of the way at a state school? And I had a lot of scholarships there. So that was costing zero. And he was right. I was like, oh, Dad, as a teenager, you don't know, you don't think about those things. But as you get older, you appreciate the wisdom of your parents. So, but yes, we have that Berkeley connection, which is really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, so nice. So you're originally from Houston. How was it growing up there? Or tell me a little bit about you as, how did you find your passion for music and what got you where you're now?
Well, basically the first profound experience that I had making music was as a child in the 4th grade. I went to public school in Houston. I lived in the suburbs, Missouri City. And the schools were great. I went to great schools. I know a lot of people in the Northeast might not think so highly of schools in Texas, but I got a great education from 1st grade all the way through 12th grade. I'm very proud of that because, again, a lot of people disrespect Texas. They have preconceived notions, but I got a great education. And along the way, a big part of that was my music education. And in the 4th grade, at my elementary school, they were putting on a show called Standing Room Only, and it involved, all the kids who wanted to do the choir stuff. It wasn't like I was doing anything outside of school. I was not taking any kind of lessons. I was not in any kind of community children's course, anything like that. It was just through public school. And the show that they put on, it was a really cool concept, actually. It was like old vaudeville songs. And they had me sing You Made Me Love You, that Judy Garland had sung. So my entree to music, as it were, was with the Judy Garland song, which makes a lot of sense where I'm at now, because that was 4th grade, and that show was profound. And the choir teacher said to me, I didn't know you could sing like that, because she had only interacted with me in minimal, school time, doing simple things like that all the kids did, playing the recorder and all of those things. But I guess I showed something in that moment. So that's when I became aware that I had something inside me, some kind of ability to express myself musically. And then nothing happened in 5th grade. I was just a student, doing my thing. But in 6th grade, I started studying music formally via the flute and band in school. I stuck with that. Flute was my principal instrument at Berklee College of Music, and I still play it. Along the way, though, I picked up a lot of other instruments. So the odd thing about my journey, the way I reflect on it now as a 46-year-old woman musician who has been doing it for decades, I think it's kind of funny that I started off with voice, but then, I went to something instrumental. I think it took me a while to get to the point where I felt ready to use my voice to express myself, because there is such a vulnerability involved in using your voice and singing. It's very loaded in a way that playing a horn or something like that is not quite as loaded, because it involves language too. And it's so personal, it's emanating from your own body. So it took me a while, but really flute, studying through school, that was my, foundation for learning music. And then at Berklee, and I'm very thankful that I was able to go to a private music school, because I know a lot of people grow up wanting to do music, but they don't do it because they think, oh, how am I going to make any money? You know? And I'm glad that I was given the freedom to just explore that, because there is a path if you believe. I'm very much a follow your bliss kind of person. And so I was fortunate to go to that school and learn more about music. And that's just been the number one overriding thing throughout my life, really a theme, something I can always come back to, something that I can rely on. The rules don't change, you know. And it's also been an excellent way to make a social network. You know, I teach voice lessons and I tell my students, I work with a lot of adults, beginners, and I try to tell them, I'm like, you know, music is a great way to meet people. It can be hard to meet people, especially after COVID. You know, people aren't working in offices as much together anymore. But music, collaborating, doing bands, things like that, putting shows together, it really gets you out in your community, meeting other people. So even if you're just a solo musician, you have to reach out to somebody to book the show, you know. So it's a great vehicle for that. And I look back now, like I said, after decades of perspective, and I realize, wow, my whole social network is from doing music, a life in music. So, but yeah, basically, you know, I studied the flute in school. And then when I got to Berkeley, I started playing in bands out in the real world, not just in the Berkeley bubble. I did a little bit of that, but also I met someone that I started playing with in the Boston music scene, and he started introducing me to other people. And that's really how I kind of kicked off my network. But it took me a little while of being a side person in other people's bands before I was ready to put those aside and embrace my own songs and put them out there. And when I finally did that, I remember the first show I did, it was at a friend's basement show. And I just remember feeling like, this is home. You know, you hear that, and I know it sounds cliche, but that was a moment where I felt like, okay, this is where I've been trying to get. You know, I wasn't ready emotionally, and I'm glad I got so much experience being a side person, because I'm a multi-instrumentalist, you know. So my first band in Boston, I had a flute to offer. I was like, hey, can I be in your rock band with my flute? Luckily, they said yes, because they were very experimental, you know, and they wanted to use different textures. Then I got an accordion, you know, from Daddy's Junkie Music, which is not around anymore, but it was a used music store and new music store. I'm like, can I play my accordion in your rock band? Luckily, they said, okay, sure. So I just started accumulating instruments. But also, I should mention that as a teenager, I discovered my father's classical guitar in the closet. It had been a gift to him. So my father is American, my mother is Turkish, and they met because my father was working for the Boy Scouts of America. They met when he was in Turkey. And somewhere along his journey working for the Boy Scouts, he was given a classical guitar as a gift. And, you know, that guitar was sitting in the closet. He wasn't really playing it. But around 16 or so, suddenly I started to notice, hey, this guitar is in the closet. Let me check this out. So I got some books and I started teaching myself. And already having had an understanding via the flute and whatnot, it was pretty easy for me to take that farther. And then, you know, it just made perfect sense. I was going to a lot of shows, rock shows. And so I started kind of working on my own songs. But like I said, I wasn't really ready to put anything out there until I had already been in bands as a side person and kind of done it for a little while to get my feet wet that way. So that's a very long-winded way of answering your question.
That's great.
I try to be thorough.
You were already like writing your songs, even though you did not put them on stage yet, right?
Yeah. So basically, you know, I started toying around with songwriting. I would say the guitar probably was the most helpful vehicle for that, frankly. So I was mostly focused on just kind of learning it the last few years of the teenage years. But then, you know, what really helped is, well, I had a banjo too that the high school had just somebody donated to the high school. Yeah, I had a banjo. One of my past bandmates called it a yard sale. It's like banjo, accordion, guitars, flutes. Okay, just bring it all out. But that's my palette, you know, to express myself like a painter with many colors. But basically, the person that I started the first band that I did in Boston, you know, as a side person, they had a 4-track. and they would, they kind of helped me record my own stuff. And so that was kind of cool because I experimented with layering and really putting those things together. And that I think really facilitated me realizing, oh, okay, yeah, I can do this. And I listened back and I'm like, hey, that doesn't sound half bad. That's kind of cool. I just kept going with it. And it's hard to say where how it all comes together, right? The inspiration plus the skill, plus the timing, the people around you, the equipment, all of that. But somehow it all coalesced and I kept going with it. And that's kind of what got me to where I am now with several recordings under my belt. I've been on over 24, including yours, and several of my own. And I'm very proud of those. I don't have kids. I have compositions and songs. So
beautiful. Can you describe the music that you write a little bit? What genre would it be in, or is it like? And then do you perform those songs by just singing and playing guitar, or do you also play all these instruments, or you run around, or how does that work?
I know, right? You're like, oh my gosh, you must be exhausted. How do you play the I'm a one-woman band over here. I'm playing the flute while playing the guitar, while playing the banjo, the accordion, and the keyboard. No, so I have kind of two modes. One is playing with the band. The other one is doing solo shows. When I record, it's usually with a full band, but live, I like the freedom and the flexibility to do both. I love getting loud. I love like rocking out, turning my amp up, everyone else turning their amps up and making a lot of noise. But I also like doing solo shows because they free me up, especially vocally, to be heard, not to have to struggle over loud sounds, because that is one thing that it's really hard to, especially playing smaller clubs, to get really good sound that can really showcase your music in a loud context. The voice is usually the thing that suffers the most, and I notice a lot more since I started teaching about 14 years ago, working with other students who are singing in bands. Sometimes I'll go see their bands and the voice is never loud enough. Never, ever loud enough. Okay. It's like, just turn it up 1,000%. Maybe then I can hear you. So I like the freedom to do both. But live, I typically play guitar and mandolin and sing. I don't usually play my flute live because I save that more for an overdub sort of situation, like on the recording. I would love to do that. My first band, Turkish Queen, where I was doing like my solo stuff, I did use my flute some, but I was playing with, the other person I was playing with, he made a lot of loops. He had like a looping pedal and we could loop things, and that kind of freed me up to maybe make a loop and then play guitar or something like that. But the way I do it now, I save those other touches for recording primarily. Yeah, so mostly mando and guitar. And a lot of people ask me about the mandolin because they hear my name, Ajda the Turkish Queen, and then they hear the mandolin, and maybe they hear like scales that aren't necessarily major scales. And so sometimes I get asked, is that some kind of Middle Eastern instrument? I'm like, no, actually it's a mandolin, which is originated, I believe, from Naples in Italy, and then has also been, used heavily in American roots music. But it's, people hear it, they hear an exotic scale, and then they hear the Turkish thing and they just assume it's like some weird instrument. I'd like to bring in more instruments. I'd love to. I do have a wish list. I'd like to get a 12-string guitar. I'd like to get a tenor guitar. So and there are a couple of cool acts that use like a saz, like this Turkish instrument that has the resonating strings, that has a really cool sound too. And I'd love to do that. I actually saw, Susie Sue from Susie and the Banshees. I saw a picture. She just performed recently for the Cruel World Festival. And I saw a picture of her with like an electric saz on stage. And I was like, wow, that's really cool. Also, I saw PIL, Public Image Limited, years ago, and they had a guy that was playing that Turkish instrument. So I'd like to keep growing, trying different things, but I have quite an arsenal of instruments at this point. I could always use more, but I only have limited storage space. So I'm half
So
joking on that.
your first band was called Ajda The Turkish Queen.
It
And
was
can you
actually just called
describe,
Turkish Queen. Yeah.
oh, just that. And
Hmm.
but why did you go for that name? I mean, obviously you grew up with that culture as well, I imagine. But did you try to put some Turkish influences in the music, or how would you?
So the Turkish thing. So again, if you think about, I had a very, I think kind of unusual upbringing in that I grew up in Texas, a place with a lot of pride and strong tradition. But my mother was Turkish. She was an immigrant, from Turkey, father American. And not only was she from Turkey, but we went there a lot. So as a child, I was exposed to a very different culture. And it really opened my eyes, it opened my mind a lot. And hearing those sounds, I'm sure it influenced me subconsciously. It's not something I ever try to do. I don't try to write in any one context, with the exception of occasionally I might think to myself, I want to write a song that's kind of like Leonard Cohen or something, but most of the time it's just I get a riff or a chord progression or a lyric or something that kicks it off.
Uh-huh.
But the origin of the name, Ajda the Turkish Queen. So when I was a teenager, again, that's such an important time in life. You've got these hormones, your consciousness is starting to crack open. You're just soaking everything up. And, having been exposed to that Turkish culture, but also I was like I would say fairly feminist leaning. And a lot of people around me were not, but I had this kind of awareness of how women are treated in the world, and how that might be different from what others are experiencing. And so I just kind of wanted to come up with something original. So I have to say, I'm an Aries, and we're very much hyper individualistic. And without trying to be, I've just realized to know this about myself, observing. And so I wanted to come up with something original. And I thought to myself, well, take the Turkish thing. That's kind of unusual. That will set me apart. And then the queen thing comes from definitely like empowerment and feeling. Also, though, the fact that in Turkey, they don't have matriarchy, So it's like there is no such thing as a Turkish queen because they don't have kings and queens over there. So I kind of wanted to put my own concept together, and it just felt right. So I've kind of been working that since I was a teenager and just stuck with it, Yeah, but also I want to mention that my mother named me after a Turkish pop star. She's basically the Turkish Cher. She's probably about the same age now. She's had a lot of plastic surgeries, and she's had many hits, and she's a very known entity in Turkey. So if people go to look up my name, Ajda, Ajda, they might be like, oh, who's this blonde older woman who's, got a lot of plastic surgery on her face? So it's kind of, I also wonder, is that part of my fate that my mom named me after a Turkish pop star, and then I've ended up doing music. So yeah, that's how the name came about. But the first band was just called Turkish Queen. It felt right. But I wasn't ready to just put my name out there first yet, because that was very much a collaboration. But my bandmate at the time was very open to the idea of calling it Turkish Queen. And so we just stuck with that. And then the next band I did, Black Fortress of Opium, that is also influenced by Turkey. So my travels over there, I saw a sign, or I was reading about a place called Afyonkarahisar, which means Black Fortress of Opium, or Black Citadel of Opium, or Black Castle of Opium. And I thought to myself, wow, that sounds exotic and perhaps polarizing to some. You might hear that name and think, oh, that's really heavy. It's got to be like metal or something. So the next band name also has a Turkish influence, even though it doesn't say Turkish in the title, right? And then finally, at this point, I kind of, after doing solo shows, and I've actually been doing those since 2005. So throughout Black Fortress of Opium, maybe I did a few of those, but that band was my primary focus. But at this point, I kind of feel like I've established myself as the primary songwriter in the last two projects. And so what I'm doing now is very much a continuation of that. It's I'm still the main songwriter. I'm still the lead voice. I'm still working with the same engineer, you know, for my not necessarily the recording, but certainly the mixing and the mastering. I've kept the same people involved. You know, I have like a team. So I kind of feel like now I'm ready to just go by my own name. And also I feel like, how can I top those band names, you know? I don't know if I could come up with another one that I would like as much as those others. So I'm just sticking with my name now.
Yeah, beautiful. And then where would is it rock or like
Oh,
hard
yes,
rock,
you're
soft
asking
rock,
about genre.
or how would I see that? I
Okay,
don't really
so
like to be boxed, but
yes, I know what you mean, you know. Okay, so a couple of things. One of my friends called it soft goth, but it's not all gothy, you know. Some of it is heavy. I have a couple songs that I've done, you know, either solo or with my last couple of bands that are heavy, you know, like not quite metal, but they're pretty heavy rock. And I would certainly say alternative, indie. You know, my influences, early influences were definitely bands like Sonic Youth and things like that. So, but I would say it's some rootsy and it's some ethereal and it's some Eastern sounding. Again, I realize more now as I get older, you have that perspective as you get older, you know, you can see things more. You look at the patterns in your life, you look at your body of work. And I've realized a lot of it just falls into kind of rootsy or kind of gothy, but then there's still a little bit of like somewhat heavy in the middle. So I hope that answers your question. But honestly, my influences are far and wide. And in this last record that I put out in April of this year, Faces of a Queen, one of the songs is very bluesy, you know, and on the first Black Fortress of Opium release, there was another blues song. And, you know, I'm from Texas. We got a lot of strong blues guitar players down there. I'm not saying I'm a strong blues guitar player, but in terms of writing blues and feeling blues, yeah. So a little bit R&B. I'm embracing that more as I get older. I'm allowing myself to let that side of my songwriting and my singing come out because it can feel a bit loaded again, you know, as a white woman, it's like singing that kind of a sound, you know, but it's just my respect for the people, the auteurs that created that music coming out too. So I hope that answers your question.
yeah, very, very, very much. I'd love to hear you talk about a significant moment when your music had a profound impact on somebody's life.
Wow, that's a tough one. Because people don't always tell you, you know, people don't always tell you, especially it can be hard for performers. You know, you do a show, you put your heart and soul into it, you just spill your guts, and then the show is over and you don't know if you reached anyone. So to that, all I can say is I have one song, Ari, from the first Black Fortress of Opium release that was self-titled. That's about Nico, the singer from the Velvet Underground, and very much in her own solo right. She had a son named Ari who was fathered by French film actor Alain Delon. And I know that that song is pretty heavy because it talks about how, not in explicit terms, but it kind of describes what a distant mother she was because she was pursuing her career and her child was kind of left in the lurch, and she was a heroin addict and then he ended up becoming a heroin addict. And so that song, I feel like that song probably really touches people. People have not come out and said that song changed my life, but they've definitely shown a reaction, like a melancholy reaction to that. It's heavy. I know they feel the heaviness of that song. So that there's that. And then I did 2 one-offs in the last few years for these BC 35 compilations. So my producer, Martin BC, he's had his studio in Brooklyn since the 70s. And so he put together a group of people to record over 2 different weekends to celebrate the 35th anniversary of the studio. And we did volume 1 and volume 2. And that was really cool. It was like a show and a party and a recording session. And I had not done the live recording thing before. And that blew my mind open, like, wow, why don't I do this more often instead of like being more clinical about overdubbing everything? But one of the songs for the second volume, BC 35 Volume 2, is called Bobby's Car. And I did have someone write to me on my social media and tell me that was their favorite song. And they actually asked me to tab it out for them, the guitar part. So I did. That was a lot of work, but it was good for me, you know, because as a musician, I do like to challenge myself. Sometimes you need a little kick in the pants because it's easy to fall into a rut. But those are just, I guess, the biggest examples of me being aware of people's direct reaction. Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. That's so
Thank
well
you.
put. Can you describe a little more about your creative process? Do these things just come to you, or do you really consciously sit down, or do you just sing it into your phone, or you scribble, or how do you do it?
All of the above. I use a lot of different ways, and this is something I tell my students too, who want to pursue original songwriting. There's process, but I'm not rigid about it. You know, I respect the way it can come. It can come in typically one of three ways. I referred to this earlier: a lyric that has a strong feeling that might compel me to, if I sit down with my guitar, my mandolin, to noodle something that matches the emotional sensibility of the lyric. So there's the lyric genesis model. Then there's also the chord progression, just playing around. Often I'll be, I try to start my practices with some technical warm-ups, whether it's guitar or voice, whatever. I put myself through that every time to try to keep my skills up. But I noticed that it's a great way to get yourself noodling, because inevitably your mind wanders and you're like, oh, what if I play this? And that can be a way you generate a new song idea. So there's the noodling, which can lead to like a riff or chord progression. I'll just play through some chords, sit down with my instrument, play through some chords. I will say the mandolin for that is great, because with the different tuning and the resonating strings, it's just got such a different sound. It can really inspire me. So often if I get a new instrument, that can influence me to write some more, create new things. But I've really been kind of sticking with guitar and mandolin for the most part. But yeah, it's typically either lyric, chord progression, or like a riff, just kind of noodling around. And it's wonderful when the universe hands you all of it together. You know, they call it a divine download, right? It's like, oh, thank you. The universe just like puts it straight into your brain. The chords, the lyrics, and the riffs. That's the best. And the melody. So that's typically my process. And I like that. I don't want to always have one way. And I do scribble. I've got a notepad right here. I use my phone as well. Voice memos, tons of them, got tons of them, you know, whether it's guitar or voice. Also, I keep a running note. I like the Notes app on the iPhone, and I keep lyric ideas going all the time. I've got another one just for tongue twisters too, because I like playing with words. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question about process.
And then you bring it to the band, and do you write it out so they can play set parts, or?
Yeah, so it's funny, you know, over COVID, I really haven't been playing with the band so much. We did some recording, but haven't been working with them as much. But typically, I like to think of it this way. I like to present the skeleton of the song and the major organs, okay? And then I'll take it to the band and they'll have me play it, and then they'll start to play along. They'll get an idea, you know, an idea for a drum beat, idea for a bass line, things like that. And or maybe I'll send them a recording before we get together and jam. I would say some other players tend to like that more than others. Some people want to get together in the room and kind of feel it out more. Other people might want to hear a recording and noodle around on their own first. So yeah.
Huh. Great. I love to hear, you already mentioned a little bit about like feminism and how you were conscious about stereotypes, but I'd love to hear a little more. Have you faced any of these stereotypes or biases as a female musician, and how do you challenge or overcome them?
Yes. So my thing is, I definitely feel like we need to advocate for ourselves. And it's obvious. You look around and you see women weren't granted access to education or the ability to hold and own land. So it's definitely there. Discrimination is deeply implanted in our world. And luckily, those doors have been opening up somewhat, and we can at least hold land now. But I don't like to come to it from the place of being victimized. I very much want to feel empowered and like I can make a difference and I can be myself. But it is true that sometimes you do face certain barriers. I will tell you one way I feel the barriers is with the gatekeeping from some of the people in the music industry. You look at, also it can be hard not being forced to use your sexuality. It's kind of feels like either you put it out there on purpose or you don't put it out there on purpose. It can be hard to strike a balance with that and not be self-conscious about it.
Right.
Whereas men don't have to deal with that. You know, men don't have the pressure if you're going to get on stage to like, it's ridiculous, I know, but to like wear a short skirt. You think about Tina Turner, right? Amazing musician. What do people always talk about? Great legs, you know, in addition, obviously, to like what a great singer she was, but guys don't have to deal with that as much. And it's just not even a consideration for them. But the gatekeeping thing, that is one thing. And that's tough because you can face obstacles with that from women and men. You know, sometimes there are women who are gatekeepers in the scene, whether it's radio or booking or whatever, that hold other female musicians back. You know, maybe they want to interact more with the male musicians. And so that's frustrating. And then the male musicians, I will say overall, I do feel like I've had a lot of freedom to do what I want, but some of them definitely, it feels like there's a wall up just because I'm of a different gender. And that's frustrating because it's like, why does it have to be like that? You know, I have songs, I want to play my song. It's just that simple. So, but I do feel like I'm a pretty outspoken person and a pretty strong advocate for myself. So I feel like I have been pretty fortunate. You hear a lot of horror stories. I don't have any horror stories to tell about my experience in the music business. It's more of a subtle thing. And I think that that's why originally weren't they talking about the need for feminism, because it's like a problem with no name. It's like, it's so hard to describe this subtle bias that it can be, if you can't even have the language to talk about it, how do you address it? So, but I try to really come from an empowered place. That's what my hope is for others as well.
Yeah. What advice would you give to aspiring women musicians who are just starting out their journey?
Well, I would definitely say, you know, work on your skills. Don't just rely on other things. Work on your skills as a musician. Study the masters. What did they do? How did they do it? Read biographies of other great musicians. What happened in their personal lives? It's not just about the words and the notes. You know, there's a lot more that goes into it, but work on your skills, do some self-reflection, get life experience, pursue other arts, get inspired. Like ask yourself, what inspires you? Is it watching cinema? Is it reading books? What's inspiring? Go see others, go meet others, and put yourself out there. Don't be afraid to do that. But I would say the number one thing, if I had to think of something, I would say to other female musicians is don't wait until it's perfect, because so many women are obsessed with perfectionism. I actually read a great book some years ago called The Confidence Code. Have you heard about that book?
I heard it. Yeah, I should put it on my list.
Yeah, The Confidence Code. It's so empowering. It examines confidence and how it develops between men and women and little things. And it definitely highlights, it's written by two women. They actually just came out with a new book called The Power Code, which I'd like to read as well. but it talks about how women are obsessed with perfectionism. It's like, we have to look perfect, we have to sound perfect, we have to do everything perfectly. So we spend all this time trying to make it perfect and thinking that that's going to get us where we need to be. But in that aspect, you got to be a little punk rock. You know, I'm not saying go for low quality. I would never say that. But don't wait until you think it's perfect before you're going to put yourself out there, because it's not a perfect world. And doing something is better than waiting so long and then never doing it, because it's never good enough. So that's one thing I would definitely emphasize to other aspiring female musicians. I really do like, I have to say, you know, having taught voice for a while, I do love mentoring so much. It feels so good to pass the torch and to try to lift others up and help them and empower them. So that's like deeply rewarding. That's an aspect of teaching that I never could have predicted I would experience. You know, my father was a teacher in public school. So now I look, it's like oaks and acorns, right? The apple didn't fall far from the tree on that one, but yeah. So, and also just doing music is such a healthy way to express yourself. So those are the main things I would say to aspiring female musicians.
Great. And you talked a little bit about like arts advocacy. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, so especially since COVID, you know, the arts took such a big hit. Arts are already vulnerable because, you know, artists are willing to put their creations out there, whether they're getting paid or not. So they're already very vulnerable to being exploited, and there's not a lot of backup or support enough to go around. So my community of Somerville, Massachusetts is a very arts aware place. They actually have affordable artist housing, and they have an arts council that is very strong and puts on a lot of events, but has recently gotten together the Somerville Cultural Capacity Planning Initiative. And so I volunteered to be an ambassador for that. So basically, especially since COVID, they realized the arts have taken such a big hit. How can we help heal? How can we build bridges between different people in different segments of the arts? So because a lot of people are in their silos, right? The graphic artists are over here, the writers are over here, the musicians are over here, the classical musicians are over here, the loud rock musicians are over here. Everyone's kind of in a silo. And so the city is trying to help empower artists in tandem with the city to try to increase cultural capacity. So let's address problems with venues. Maybe we don't have enough venues to really help artists of all different ilks and stages of their development, different genres, speaking specifically to musicians, to showcase their work. But what about rehearsal space too? You know, we don't have a rehearsal space here. So that's my big project, is trying to advocate to get a loud music rehearsal space built here in Somerville, because there is a lot of development happening in this community. And I'm thinking to myself, looking around, seeing all the cranes, one of those cranes should be working on a music rehearsal space because I just lost my space. So that's a big part of why I'm getting interested in this arts advocacy. I was in the same rehearsal space for 18 years. Okay, 18 years. That afforded me so much space to gestate, for my art to gestate, for me to explore, for me to create, not having to worry about being quiet for neighbors, things like that. And artists need those spaces. Musicians need spaces like that. And all the other ones in the surrounding towns are full. So that says to me, okay, there's a need there. But hundreds of musicians were displaced, like myself, when my rehearsal space closed. So for now, I have my loud music gear all in there, all my amps and guitars and then things had to come home. And that's okay. That's okay. But so I'm working on that cultural capacity planning, and I'm just so thankful to live in a community that has that awareness. They want to support the arts, but they realize it can't all come from the city. It's got to, you know, artists need to step up and get involved in the process, because a lot of musicians and fine artists, they're in the background. They're like, oh man, it sucks. Rent is high. We can't pay for rent. We don't have anywhere to live. We don't have the venues. It's like, okay, well, are we just going to sit back and whine about those things? Or are we going to try to get some kind of plan together, unite, build bridges, use our numbers to move forward, you know? So, but especially as I've gotten older, as an older musician, like I said, my own struggles, losing my space. Plus, I do live in an affordable artist unit, and I am so thankful. It is a great place to live. I'm the happiest I've ever been in my life in terms of that. And I feel so thankful. So it's part of the way I want to give back to my community. I also want to give a shout out to my father, because he is a very big volunteer in his community. He's always been like that, whether it's volunteering for festivals or AARP in his community, things like that. And so I feel like it's my turn now to give back. And how can I best give back? Something related to music. It makes perfect sense. And it just so happens that, you know, my city is doing that initiative now. So it's like, it's all just coming together and coalescing. It makes perfect sense for me to get involved in this. But I will say it is hard. It is really hard to get people involved. You know, I've been trying to get people out to meetings and things, and other musicians in my community, they'll complain on Facebook all day long about what's wrong, try to get them to a meeting with free pizza and try to move it forward. And it's a ghost town. So, you know, community organizing, it's really tough, but the people that show up have great ideas. And it's just so heartening, again, that at least we have a process. The first step, though, is the bloodletting, like addressing, like letting these complaints, the years of pain and struggle, let's talk about it first. Then let's say, okay, what can we do? How can we make it better? So things like I said, trying to get venues of different sizes, improving the venue experience, because I'm sure you know, as a musician, a lot of times the venues you play, the quality might not be that high, okay? How you're experiencing it as a performer and how the audience is taking it in, because how much care is really being put into that sound system, okay? Or soundproofing and whatnot. So again, not just always to criticize, but try to address what can we do, what would be better, and can we actually get there? Or can we even get halfway? Because that's gonna be better than where we're at now. But it's a wonderful thing. It's just so heartening, again, that there is some kind of process like this, instead of just feeling trapped like, oh man, it sucks, you know?
Yeah. Well, you wrote in your little questionnaire, you know, you're all about a growth mindset, especially throughout the years, where you just focus more on like, how can we fix this? I really appreciate you describing that, because
Yeah,
that
growth
is how we're
mindset.
gonna make a change.
Totally. It's a big thing. And honestly, I only became aware of that concept in the last few years myself. And it's huge once you realize, because, and that's the other thing, it's so hard to turn it around because so many artists are coming from the point of you know, like a deficit, right? So scarcity mindset. And so I started hearing about that from other people in the music industry, about this whole concept of like abundance and growth mindset. It's so true. It's like you have to realize you can make a change. It's kind of like, what kind of person do you want to be? And honestly, that's what that book, The Confidence Code, they talk a lot about that, because some people assume confidence comes from, oh, my parents weren't confident, so I'm not confident. But that's a cop out, because it's like, what kind of person do you want to be? You know,
Right.
do you want to be the kind of person that does stuff, or are you okay with just sitting back? All right, you know, there's obviously some of all of that. But the growth mindset thing, and it's not just enough to be that way on your own. You have to surround yourself with other people that are also like that, because those are going to be the people that support you. You can support each other. If you're surrounded by people that are coming from the scarcity mindset all the time, it makes it really hard for you to stay motivated and to feel empowered. So I've realized as I get older, you know, you cut out the noise in your life, you cut out the friends that are flaky, you cut out the negativity, and you whittle it down to who's going to support me, who can I support, and let's keep it positive. So I definitely try to stay positive. I'm not a perfect person by any stretch, but I've been fortunate enough to kind of cull away and realize, okay, These are some negative influences in my life. I do not need this in my life. It's my life. I have to embrace it, and I can make the change. I get the choice. So we can't always control that in every situation, but to where we can, I try to.
Yeah, awesome. So, how do you navigate the balance between staying true to your artistic vision and meeting commercial expectations? How do you balance your life between business and music?
Well, do you mean like making money, like keeping the lights on and doing
Yes,
music?
of
Or do you
course.
mean more like, you know, keeping the hits coming and staying true to my artistic vision? So when it
Oh,
comes
either.
to, yeah, I'll address both. I'll address both. Um, so I teach voice lessons, also some beginner guitar and some theory. And honestly, I've turned a lot of my voice students onto guitar and things too, because they'll realize, hey, I want to play a song, right? So it's like, hey, grab that guitar. You got a guitar? Cool. Let's learn a little bit about it. So I love doing that. And like I said, working with adults is a special passion of mine because I just love adult education. Adults are there because they want to be there. They are not forced to be there. I've worked with kids too, and that's great. And I've been fortunate to work with kids that are awesome. And that's a whole different kind of fun and enjoyment for the teacher, and very challenging, I will say. I also work part-time at the local election commission in Cambridge. I've been working there actually this just as long as I've been teaching voice, so since 2009. And over the years, that'll fluctuate how much I work there. I will say that I've worked there more since the presidential election, the last presidential election. And I was very fortunate to have that during COVID because it got me out of the house and being around people. You know, we're a paper-based office
Right.
there. So it's like a part-time gig. It's a paper-based office. It's close. I can walk there in 20 minutes. It's in my community. The election thing is important to me. So I try to like help people around me in my circles be more aware of keeping up on your registration and things like that. Again, it's a form of empowerment, right? Your vote counts. So I do that, and then I teach. And so it is a challenge though. There have been times where I like I said, the election commission thing will fluctuate. And so sometimes if I'm not doing any of that and I'm just teaching, it's pretty minimal. You know, I'm getting by on very little coming in, but I have more time to pursue my art and so it's really hard. It's a constant fluctuation. Also, the demands change. Like if I don't have a gig coming up, then I don't feel as stressed about that. And I do feel I've established myself to a large degree. I've put out several recordings. I'm not in the beginning phase. So I feel like I've had phases in my life where I was able to focus more on the art, and a lot came out of that, right? My output, my recorded output, which I feel, by the way, is very important as a female artist, especially. It's like, if I'm going to spend all this time working on my art and I'm not just doing covers, I'm working on original songs, I better put out a recording, because why else am I doing it? I have nothing to show for all of those hours, you know, effort and struggle that you put into it. So I feel it's very important as a female artist to have that output that you can show the world, you know, something tangible for your efforts. So it is a bit of a fluctuation. You know, sometimes I work more, sometimes I work less. When I work less, there's less money coming in, but I also have more freedom to do what I want and have adventures that might inspire a new song, or to spend time promoting something I've already recorded or making some kind of connection. So right now, though, I just want to mention really quickly in terms of growth mindset and, you know, income as an artist, I'm pursuing some online courses in sync licensing. So I'm trying to, I'm trying to explore the path of licensing my recordings, my assets that I've created to film and TV. And that this is a good time to be in that because there's so much content. But I've realized over COVID, I'm a little less focused on live gigs and clubs around here and more focused on pursuing the sync path. I want to explore that. You know, I feel the need, again, I'm 46. I've explored the club thing a lot. I'm not saying I'm never going to do it again, but kind of been there, done that, you know, and I want to grow. And so this is another way for me to exploit my recordings and potentially to get them out there to more people. You know, if I got my music in a show, it could get out to more people. And if I got income from that, that could fund more recordings. So I'm just hoping to get like a stream coming in that way at some point here. So I'm working on those courses, but also the inner student in me loves that. The growth mindset part of me loves the learning, trying something new. But it relates to my recording. So it's exciting. You know, it's an exciting thing. I want to feel like I don't have to be the same person I've always been. I don't want to feel like I just have to keep doing small club gigs for the rest of my life, like I am condemned, you know, to exile on a small island or something. It's like I want to grow and I want to change and I want to try different things, and that feels right for where I'm at in my life, my age and everything. I also want to give a shout out. I know you were interested in books. There's another book that I read recently called From Strength to Strength, and it definitely talks about the latter half of life and why around middle age you start to feel different. You know, you start to feel like the previous path you were on might be a little worn out and you want to try something different. And it kind of examines that. And the guy who wrote it, he was actually a classical musician. He was a professional musician I think he was in a symphony, maybe in San Francisco. I think he played French horn. I forget the details, but it was so empowering because it just frees you up to try different things.
That's great. I'll put that on my list too.
Yeah, From Strength to Strength. I'm pretty sure the author is Arthur C. Brooks. He, I believe he writes for The Atlantic, and maybe also, I've heard him on NPR. I listen to NPR every single day. Yes, liberal right here. In Cambridge, Somerville, definitely. But I kept hearing about this book, and so I got it. I got it for myself. I actually rented it, checked it out from the library right around the corner. So, but it was very empowering. It was like just right on time, mid-40s, perfect.
Awesome. Great. So, what are upcoming projects or goals that you're excited about in the future?
Well, again, I'm excited about the sync licensing thing. I really have to buckle down on that and finish the course. I bought one course last fall because they had a mini challenge and I really liked it and I could see where it could lead. So I bought the full course. There's a lot of work involved and I'm about halfway through that. So I'm learning that. I got to finish that. And then I went and I bought another course too in the same thing, but from a different teacher, from a different perspective, because I wanted to get like a range of perspectives. So I want to finish my sync licensing courses. And this weekend, I got asked to do a live set as part of a telethon for a local Somerville Media Center. They're doing a fundraiser. So that's great. You know, I haven't been doing the live gigs so much. So I'm dusting off the mandolin and reconnecting with my songs live for that. I do have a couple of other songs I would like to record, hopefully over the next year. There are two that I'm thinking of. One is kind of a very fall track, very autumnal. So I'd like to work on that, maybe try to get it out by the fall. And the other one's a little more of a summer track. I might have missed the boat on getting that out this year, but those are kind of the next two I have in mind. And then I have a whole nother batch of songs I wanted to record. I wanted to include on Faces of a Queen, but due to COVID, you know, those recording sessions were scheduled for right before COVID hit, and we were able to halfway through actually get them done. But because the other people I play with are, you know, they're committed to other projects and things, and I've kind of been taking a bit of a break from that side of things myself. So I'd like to get back to that, make some more recordings, finish the sync class, and whatever opportunities, if some other good live opportunities come along, I would say yes. So I'm hoping that they will.
Well, that sounds exciting. I think the licensing is an amazing alternative way to do it if you crack the code of some sort, right? So
well, that's what this course is about. This course, you know, the guy that teaches the course, he's had over 1,500 sync placements, including like Super Bowl commercials and all these major brands. He's done it, and he has
Who is it?
his name is Michael Elsner, Elsner. And the course is called Master Music Licensing. And it's great. Like I've just really been, there's so many levels and layers to it. And so far, you have to catalog all of your stuff first, right? And then especially for my newer recordings, you have, so the metadata, learning about metadata, and also like stemming out all the basic tracks for potential remixers for shows, to have those available. But I'm in the early stages, but I feel good about it. And I'm using my most recent recording. That's going to be it just so happened that I started doing the course kind of in the middle of that, like when I was in the mix phase. So it's great because I could sit with my engineer and say, okay, I need this, because I was asking him for some new things that I hadn't tried before. And that was exciting too, and I'm like, he's growing too because he's trying new things. So it's exciting. And I'm just so thankful. Again, I have an engineer that I work with regularly that I can communicate with well and try these things. So we're going to see how it works out. There's a master spreadsheet that I'm working on right now and just cataloging everything, but it sets you up very professionally so that once you present yourself to a sync agent or a music library, you've got your T's crossed and I's dotted. You look professional. You can talk the talk, the terminology. You're not just like, hey, I've got some tracks. So, and sync licensing is something I've thought about for a long, long time. And I finally buckled down and like bought the course. I was like, I need to do this, because I was trying to cobble a little information together by myself here and there, like, a little free seminar online, 1 hour course. That's not enough. You really need to sit down with someone that's done it. And luckily there are a lot of people out there in the industry. Over COVID, I started watching a lot of these online presentations, people in all aspects of the industry, from songwriting to recording to sync licensing. I start to realize there's this whole community out there of these people that teach these courses. That's another thing I would like to do. Actually, I'd love to get an online course together for voice at some point, but I want to finish the sync thing first. See, that's one thing about, again, I'm an Aries and I am into astrology. I actually did a podcast interview for an astrology thing yesterday. But cool. Finishing projects is so hard. It's easy to be like, okay, this song's cool, blah, blah, blah. But then actually recording it and then releasing it and then promoting it and all those things. So I really need to just buckle down and finish this. And it's going to feel so good when I finish that course, let me tell you. But I'm excited to try that. Like that show Wednesday. I don't watch a lot of TV, but I did see that show Wednesday, and that was like such a cute show. And I was like, damn, I'd love to have a song on the next season of that, So yeah. But the sync thing, it just feels so healthy. Of course, there's a learning curve, right? You have to get to know the people, the landscape, the ecosystem. But it certainly feels better to me, more authentic for where I'm at, than trying to play a club where the sound system isn't very good and they don't even pay you very well anyway. And it's hard to get people there and all the struggles that go along with that. I kind of feel like that path is a little worn out for me, So I want to aim for something higher.
It feels like your passion is really into writing and then producing your songs. And if that's, and you've done a lot of it. So yeah, why not use these songs that you already have and then write more and use this as assets?
It's true. I'll tell you what the dream would be. The dream would be to be able to write in the studio. That's like the big dream, right? If I had income coming in from sync licensing that could fund that would be wonderful. Just, all right, hit play and hit record and then let's go. And I'll just try different ideas out or whatever and figure out the more full form later. But yeah, that would be great. So I'm hoping I could maybe get there. And these people that are teaching these courses, it's crazy because they're not names that they're not like Beyonce. You don't know these people's names, but they've done it and they make a living at it. And that seems a lot more sustainable than the small club thing for sure. So it just feels new and exciting. And so, yeah, I want to explore that. And again, like something I've wanted to do for a while, but now I'm actually kind of committing to it. Yeah, actually committing to it.
Great. Awesome. Well, it's been a pleasure to talk to you and to get to know you a little more. And I love to stay in touch. And if I'm going to be in Boston, then we should totally connect.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'd like to get to know you more. Like, I'll do a little bit of this, a little bit of that. That keeps me happy. I need some variety in my day. I can't do the same thing every day, 9 to 5. Even if it was just one thing in music, I don't think I'd be happy that way. I need the variety. That's part of where my inspiration comes from. It's changing things up a little bit. Too much of the same is distressing. And so I need a little variety, need a little adventure in every day. Awesome.
So good to talk to you and be in touch.
Okay, sounds good. Talk to you later. Take care. Bye.
As I conclude this episode of ViviTalks, I want to express my sincere gratitude for joining me in this musical journey. I hope you enjoyed exploring the stories and experiences of the incredible female musicians on my album. To stay updated on our latest episodes, subscribe to ViviTalks on your favorite podcast platform. Connect with me on social media through Vivienne, and please check out my album Typuhthâng, a musical exchange featuring 100 female musicians to empower female cacao farmers of Virunga State Park in Congo. It's about more than just music. It's about making a positive impact in the world. Your support is part of that journey, so thank you once again for tuning in. Until next time, keep celebrating the power of music, and let's continue to amplify the voices of remarkable women in the industry. Stay inspired, stay empowered, and keep the music flowing. With love and gratitude. Till soon.